celebrate the upcoming Iowa caucuses, and certainly what I'm seeing here is going to serve you very well, both in the upcoming Ames straw poll, which comes up on August 13th, as well as the caucuses coming up in February. And to all those East Coast analysts that are trying to question the wisdom of having Iowa have the first in the nation caucuses, let's just put that to rest right now and say how wrong they are and how representative Iowa is indeed of the concerns of the nation, the cost of health care, debts and deficit, the cost of fuel. All of those things are issues that Iowans are deeply concerned about. And the message of Congressman Paul and other Republican candidates are resonating because we're seeing increases in our voter registration while the other party and the independents are seeing decreases here in Iowa. Here in Iowa, our founding fathers indeed believe that our very best days ahead. They believe that we have, by adhering to the principles of the past, we have a great future. And so congratulations today on helping to make that dream come true. Thank you for what you're doing. Congratulations and God bless. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Well, it is my great honor and pleasure to introduce Congressman Paul to you. As a Texas Republican, he's been elected 12 times at the federal level. And as a strict constitutionalist, Congressman Paul has never voted for an unconstitutional bill. His reputation has earned him the nickname of Dr. No for all the bills that he's voted no on. During his practice as an OBGYN, he has delivered more than 4,000 babies, and I don't know how he can get more pro-life than that, in fact. Now, his warnings on the financial crisis and the economic downturn that we are currently experiencing has made him a well-sought-after speaker, especially in the area of free market economics and sound money. So I'll yield the microphone to Congressman Paul.
James, thanks for that nice introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here. You know, I asked coming over here whether we'd have some people and some supporters or just what was going on. They said, there ought to be a handful of people. So you must have really big hands out here. Anyway, it's so nice to see this crowd here today. You know, this morning I started off pretty early. We had an interview out of my home. You want to go a little closer? Okay. I had an interview in my hometown before I left, and it was on CNBC. That's the Squawk Box, the business station. Anybody happen to see that? You were probably making a living, you know. But anyway, it was a very interesting interview. I had followed Santorum. He was another candidate that was being interviewed. My interview wasn't related to that, other than the fact that I followed him. But they brought up the subject that they acknowledged that you know, I was doing rather well and showing up in the polls and things looked real good. You know, they were very positive and very polite. But then the real clincher came, and the interviewer said, "But now what are you going to do? Because how are you going to reach the mainstream? How are you going to approach and get more people in? Because we know how enthusiastic your supporters are, and we know there's a significant amount. But how do you get to the mainstream?" And I said, well, I think what we need to do in this country is have the mainstream change the definition. Because the mainstream right now believes in huge deficits, national debt of $14 trillion, wasteful spending, printing money when you need it. I said, that can't be mainstream. I think what we have been talking about is mainstream. You know, why shouldn't it be mainstream to have balanced budgets and sound money and limited government, personal liberty, keep the federal government out of the business of the state government here in Iowa? That to me seems to be mainstream. So, and I think that is what's happening. I think that's part of what you saw in the last election and the Tea Party movement, the growth of the Republican Party. I think the mainstream attitudes are changing, and they're not the conventional wisdom of the status quo. Because that's one thing I think the American people are sick and tired of, is the status quo, because that's how we've gotten here. And it's not only the status quo of the opposition party. We at times in the Republican Party have been responsible for some of this spending too. And I think the growth in the party is coming from independent-minded people and people who have felt disenfranchised, and we'd send people to Washington and be conservative, but then they wouldn't vote that way. So I think the shift is definitely in our direction toward looking toward this very, very extreme position of like obeying the Constitution for a change. And that of course, I think, right. In a very courteous and friendly way, I was called Dr. No. I'm called Dr. No all the time, and yet it's a mixed bag, because who wants to be negative? And but of course, if they're burning your house down, and they're doing bad things, maybe you want to say no to what they're doing to us. And if they're burning down our freedoms, and you're saying no, no more, that's a different thing. So I like to put it in context of a positive thing, even though I do not resent being called Dr. No, because I think most people know that I'm saying no to big government. But there's no reason why we can't put everything that we believe in and everything we vote for in a positive sense. No, yes, we vote against big spending, but we vote for free markets and sound money and and voting for liberty and the Constitution. These are all very, very positive. So I don't want to let it stand that this is a negative approach. We're against this and this and this. But my wife really came up with one of the better answers for this, because she, matter of fact, staff, everybody likes the term Dr. No because it makes that point. But my wife was a little bit annoyed with this, because she too didn't like this. It sounds like you're too negative. But she finally came up and she says, well, I guess if you're Dr. No and they would only spell it with a K, I wouldn't mind it too much. Does face some very, very serious problems, and we've all heard about, and we've talked about the financial problems that we have and the expenditures for all kinds of things, from overseas welfare spending to domestic welfare spending, corporate welfare spending. It's absolutely out of control. And when you think, when an individual makes an effort, which I give I give a little bit of credit to Paul Ryan, you know, one of these days, pretty soon, they're going to quit taking it. And the early signs will be when you see prices going up. And prices have started to go up. And the containers of food that we're buying are getting smaller. People's standard of living has continued to go down. It's been going down subtly and steadily for 10 years, but it's going down more rapidly now. So as long as we believe, as we still do, that we can have a free ride because of the circumstances of coming out of World War II, we were the financial powerhouse, and we were literally given the so-called right to counterfeit the money. I mean, and then finally in '71, when we got rid of the gold standard, there was no restraints whatsoever. So we've been doing that. And as long as we do that, we're going to have problems to pay and problems to deal with. Now, why is this so important? Well, standard of living is a major thing, but it's also a threat to our communities. It's a threat to our families. We already know that families are needing to come together. Students who get out of college, they're not getting jobs, they're moving back in, and they're improvising. And some parts of the country are worse than others. But it is a very subtle, if not very direct, attack on the way we live and our families and how we have to pull together. The solution, of course, for this ultimately will be families. When governments lose control, which they eventually do because they can't afford it and the system breaks down, we're going to have to resort to the family, because that to me is the key. Which means that whether we're talking about medical care or whether we're talking about education, I think we ought to always argue the case that the family and individuals have the right to opt out and take care of themselves and get the government off their back. This is one of the reasons that the Tea Party movement really got momentum, was when Obamacare was proposed. It was mandated. Everybody had to go into it, and they were asking, just let us opt out of the system. But in a way, we can't opt out of a lot of things already. If you decided you wanted to have your own medical program after you're 65, you really don't have much chance to opt out. You don't have many chances. So opting out is a key issue. Whether it's in medicine, you can have medical savings account and get your deductions and write off your taxes and assume responsibility for yourself. I think that would be good. But how about in education? Just think of what it would be like. Right now, we still have the right to opt out. I have many members of my family who are in public education, and I went through all public education, but I believe very, very strongly that we ought to always fight and argue for the right to opt out of the system and protect homeschooling and private schooling. Always the threat to our personal liberties and our prosperity is the size of the government. The larger the government, the more rules and regulations and taxes, the less prosperity there is. The most prosperous societies have always been the freest societies. We were and had been the freest society ever, and we were the most prosperous. Today we have given up on that. Right now we owe more money to China than any other country, so something awfully strange is going on. They can invest around the world, they loan us money, and we're not the prosperous country where we used to be. Our good jobs have gone overseas because of this economic mess that we have created for ourselves. So we as a people have to understand that we should and can take care of ourselves, and the responsibility there is not only economic, because that's where you provide it, but it's also a moral issue as far as I'm concerned. My own personal belief is that I start off in a personal way with the morality of life. I am convinced that our lives come from our Creator, and our rights come from our Creator, not from our government. And understanding of this, and we start saying, well, we have to have this bailout, or this bailout will be a disaster if we don't have bailout Wall Street and all the arguments that they made, would be forgetting about this fundamental, the right to life and the right to liberty. And to me, they are very, very important. But I'm not thinking about the life after it's born. I think we have to have absolute respect for all life, and that means pre-born life as well.